this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
AfterMovieDiner.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife dork herself. AfterMovieDiner.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast, the official podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Welcome to another edition of the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. I am your host, Brad Gullickson, the Mouth Dork, and I am bringing a very special ITMOD CHATcast to you dorks today. This is cool, okay? This is really, really cool. Lisa, the wife dork, and myself had an opportunity to Skype with filmmaker Michael Sparaga, who has just made the documentary United We Fan, which is a detailed and passionate account of all of these fan campaigns that have happened over the course of the years to save a show in trouble. Most famously, Star Trek, right? After its second season, ratings were not too hot. So Bjo and John Trimble, they were just a couple of fans. They got it in their head that the cancellation of Star Trek would be a total crime, and they weren't going to let that go without putting up a fight. And they started a letter writing campaign, and because of their actions, got Star Trek into its third season. And that third season was crucial for the franchise to stretch all the way into its 50 years. Because without that third season, they would not have had enough episodes for syndication, and Star Trek would not have found another life on the reruns. And I can't even imagine what my life would be like without Star Trek. All you dorks who come in and listen to us every episode know that I am a massive Trekkie and that Lisa's a massive Trekkie, and it means the world to us. So if you're like us and you love Star Trek, you really owe your love affair with Gene Roddenberry's vision to Bjo and John Trimble. And here we are talking to them about our favorite subject, Star Trek, but also talking about fandom as a whole and what it was like in 1966, what it was like in 1986, what it was like in 2006, and what is it like today in 2018, because it has changed quite a bit. I love this conversation. I really think it is quite a privilege to chat with Bjo and John Trimble. And gosh, my thanks to Michael Sparaga for putting a spotlight on all the positive things that fandom can produce and show us that there is still hope out there for all us nerds. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the conversation, and I'll meet you back here in the Dork Cave after we finish up. All right, take it away, guys. And we are back in the Dork Cave today. We've got some real special guests from the new documentary, United We Fan. We have director Michael Sparaga. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
And, of course, we've got the legendary Bjo and John Trimble.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bjo and John, I don't know if you remember, we met briefly during the Star Trek 50th anniversary celebration at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. And it was a real honor to meet the two that really were responsible for Star Trek lasting as long as it has, 50 plus years now.
Yeah, we'd love to have had a piece of that action, but, even little teeny babies. Unfortunately, a lot of fans think that we made a fortune off of by doing that. No, we didn't.
Well, even if you didn't make your fortune, I can say that as somebody who didn't come to Star Trek until the early 1980s, I am very thankful to your letter writing campaign. And in my relationship with Lisa, my co-host right here, some of our early bonding dates were all centered around conversations circling around Star Trek. So thank you for that.
We were saying the other day, what the hell have we accomplished? And I said, well, we've made history and changed it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
As a fellow nerd couple, we see you guys as the patron saints of nerdy marriages, and I just wonder, like, what have you found about fandom, like being fans together? Because it's not just Star Trek. You're also do the SCA every week and all of that wonderfulness. Like, what about fandoms helps sustain a relationship after all of these years and decades?
Well, originally this was happening back in the 70s, 60s, whatever, I can't count. And
late 50s, actually.
A lot of people felt very, very dissociated from their own family. And in some cases from their community, what should have been their community of friends. And fandoms, generally, and that includes all of them, put people together who had similar interests. And who, if they weren't exactly similar, they were at least something they could argue with without starting World War III. And I think that, that had a great deal to do with it.
We were pink monkeys in a whole world of brown monkeys. And we were drawn together for that. And we got to be friends, and then the relationship went further, and we've been married for 58 years and are still each other's best friend.
Yeah, we are.
That's so awesome.
I know that sounds
mutual
right.
interest in science fiction and fandom and all of the associate things.
Well, fandom as we know it today really seems like it began in that era, and it's evolved obviously. But Michael, in putting the film together, United We Fan, I think I know the answer already. But like, why start with the Trimbles, and then how did you navigate exactly what you wanted to say in your documentary?
I mean, for me, the film start was always about community. It's about people identity. It's funny, the quick pitch on the film, it's about fans who fight to save their favorite TV shows. I know it sounds like an Entertainment Tonight story. It sounds like something that's really fast and really fast-paced cutting, and it's like, today, da-da-da-da, and it's just, that can't sustain a 90-minute movie. It has to be something deeper. And I knew from writing my first ever letter to a network to try and save a show called Crime Story when I was 13 years old, even though it was just one letter, I remember feeling like I was part of a democratic sort of grassroots movement, and feeling, even though I watched the show independently, I didn't even have any friends who liked the show, even though I watched it by myself. When I saw there was a letter writing campaign, I felt like I was part of a community, which was great. And I just knew going into it that I wanted to find people that were part of a community, and they were all. I mean, every story of every fan campaign that's in the film are about people that were, in some ways trying to save the show, for sure trying to save the show, trying to see more stories, see those characters, but really, in a way, they're also fighting for the people they share the show with and the group of people. And I really loved talking to Bjo and John the first time. The first time I met them, we just went to a great barbecue joint near their place called Jake's. I just finished my barbecue sauce that I bought that day, by the way, and I bought an extra bottle of barbecue sauce. And just hearing their story, it was so inspiring, and I knew it had to be the film. I mean, I knew the Star Trek story had to be the film. It's the granddaddy of all fan campaigns. But meeting them and hearing the story of community they put together and how they knew Gene, I just knew it was going to be more than just a one-off appearance. They were going to appear throughout the whole film.
And, you know, that idea of fan activism, I think you label it fan activist. What is the appeal of that concept of the fan who fights for their love?
I think I'm sorry, I just spoke right over you. Go ahead.
Go for it. You go for it, please.
I think it's being able to have a say in things.
We were mad as hell and weren't going to take it anymore. It's essentially our feeling when we discovered that they were going to cancel the show.
Mm-hmm.
They'd already canceled some really nice shows. One about James Thurber called My World and Welcome to It, which, by the way, starred William Wyndham, one of the Star Trek actors.
Wow.
And, you know, it gave him, four episodes, and then boom. Quark. Of course, you know, nobody understands send-up humor, and so, and certainly, in big business. So the problem is that they didn't know how funny it was. And things like that. Things were happening all over the place, and we just, all of a sudden we hear that Star Trek is being canceled. It's like, all right, that's it.
What is the world coming to at that point?
Yeah, really, you know.
And we lived in Oakland at the time. We'd been in Los Angeles. So we're driving 380 some miles to get home. This was before the interstate, so it was a lengthy drive. And we're talking with each other about this. And this is when I said to my dear wife, that I should have known better. You know, it's really sad that the show's being canceled. There ought to be something we could do about that. And that was pouring down the gauntlet there. We spent the rest of the trip formulating the Save Star Trek campaign.
And you poured so much energy taking you were caring for your child and you were working, and then you were taking your weekends to bring this community together to be writing these letters. Was there any point in that initial campaign where you got discouraged or you felt like your efforts were going to be futile?
Actually, no.
Yeah, John didn't feel that way. I every now and then would think, what have we done here? You know, but let me tell you a little something. We didn't know until about then that our oldest daughter had been born mentally retarded. Mm-hmm. And when we got this news, it was devastating. And so, I mean, frankly, running the campaign gave us something outside ourselves.
It gave us a focus that we could, focus on besides that, and gave us hope.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like a similar...
It wasn't just on the weekends.
That was a theme that we saw through all three of these narratives. That with you guys, dealing with your daughter, and then Kylie, and with the person of interest, she was also going through a tough time in her life, and Dorothy Swanson starting VQT. Where in your editing or research process did these three narratives that tie this whole fandom documentary together, when did these three narratives reveal themselves?
Well, it's funny. Sort of early on, we knew we wanted, Star Trek, and then it was in the research of shows that were saved, and we were just going historically. And when you attack a big subject like this, you just start, let's research historically and work our way forward. Who knows if the film will go straight forward from, starting in the 60s till now, but let's just try and find those stories. And so we saw the Cagney and Lacey story. And we're like, oh, great, this woman, Dorothy Swanson, did that. And then we saw, oh, great, the dining room was saved. Weird, a woman named Dorothy Swanson did that. Then we went to the next thing in the 80s, Quantum Leap. Dorothy Swanson did. We're like, is this the same Dorothy Swanson? So our research led us to Viewers for Quality Television, this group, this organization she had formed, this letter writing campaigns. Again, Bjo, we say in the film, came up with the rules for how this is supposed to be done and wrote them down, and these rules just kept moving forward through history. I mean, people and John are better known. They're the most famous fan activists that ever saved a show because they saved the biggest show in television history. I mean, you can say there's, I Love Lucy was well known, or the Honeymooners, or whatever. There's not somewhere in the world most weekends some sort of conference about I Love Lucy. There's maybe a celebration now and then, but Star Trek continues to this day. So it's the biggest show, and they're the best known for it. Dorothy is sort of, retired in Florida and has really nothing to do with the fact that she saved all of these shows. But she did something amazing in 16 years, going from a Michigan housewife and school teacher, really just truly obsessed with Cagney and Lacey, to running an organization that had Seinfeld and Kelsey Grammer and Paul Reiser and everybody coming to accept awards. And she was a professional fan activist. So that story was sort of an obvious one. And Kaylee just came to us because we were looking for a show that was currently trying to be saved. And there were a few options out there, and I put telephone calls out to all those people. And her story of why she got into watching Person of Interest, to me, was really engaging. The fact that she was gay and there was a gay relationship on the show, and that was a big part of her identity to see on CBS, and she says that in the film. You don't get to see that very often on CBS. And I didn't recognize myself maybe how important major networks having gay characters on the show was until talking to Kaylee. And then, of course, the other campaigns that appear in the film, those are either shows I really loved or campaigns I really loved and did something really special in a new way.
Now, Bjo and John, when you hear these stories that Michael is stringing together in his film, obviously fan activism has evolved greatly since your letter writing campaign days. But how do you feel when you encounter other fans taking up the cause of saving the shows and stories and characters that they love?
My feeling is right on. Go for it.
For many years, fans would write us and say, we want to save thus and such. How did you do it? And we'd send them the whole, we had to sit down finally and just do a whole list of things and explain why this was important. And it was a really interesting sort of thing because some people followed us and some didn't. And, that was for them. Some people followed us after they tried their ideas and realized, it isn't going to work. And, hello, we tried this. So, this is why we were telling you this. Many people now who use our ideas are claiming it for their own. If that makes them happy, okay, fine. I'm not getting paid for it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But by and large, we sent out over 200, lists to people, and some of them took it and tweaked it, and a lot of people said, "Oh, well, it won't work in the computer age." Really? Yeah, I'm gonna try it, kiddos.
Well, we got a call from a friend who worked at the time at JPL, and he said that the Luddites in Congress were talking about canceling the New Horizons probe.
Yeah.
And he said, is there any way you could help with that? And we formulated a letter, and Bjo sat down and called up all of the space enthusiasts and Star Trek fans that we had on our mailing list at the time, which was pretty enormous. And with a click of a button, sent this out to more people than we ever contacted in the letter writing campaign.
Wow.
And we asked it. It was one click. I loved it. And I'm sure we would miss the weekends of spaghetti or chili, but the fact is, it was a lot less work. I asked the furthest away person. I said, whoever this is, when you get this message, please contact me. Well, in about an hour and a half, we get South Africa. We got people from Australia and New Zealand. We got people, just people coming in. We got the message, we're spreading it. And that was the whole idea. Get the message and spread it. Now, are we taking away from the man who's been written up as the guy who finally got New Horizons on track again? No, we're not. He was working in an entirely different circle of people, and we were. And while we didn't get any credit for it, that's okay too. It worked. We don't care now. The thing is that we had to wait 288 years for another chance for Pluto to come past us.
But I really think there is something too, like with a letter writing campaign or these other campaigns, like the campaign where they send like gifts, like the campaign with the nuts or whatever. I think that the fact that like the old letter writing campaigns, you have like a physical manifestation of love, where I feel like online petitions or email chains or whatever, I just feel like they just don't have that like the ease of a click of a button is not as persuasive as somebody went through the trouble of buying a stamp nowadays. You know what I mean?
Well, yes, and we both agree with you on that. The whole thing about that was that we had now become busier people, and here we are with all of this.
Technology has changed the world in ways we could not have foreseen in 1967 and 8. And so if you're going to do something like what we did, it's going to have to be approached from the electronic angle, frankly. And that doesn't, there isn't this sense, you're right, Lisa, of activism that's sustained over a period of time. It's a whole different experience now. And I treasure the experience we had.
Now, I know you addressed this in United We Fan, and you've talked about it many times before, but as somebody who was deeply and profoundly changed by Gene Roddenberry's ideas and by Star Trek in its many iterations, I have to ask the original Trekkies, that put themselves out there in this campaign, the question of why.
Yeah, okay. Because,
well,
it had to be done.
First of all, it was the first really mature science fiction presentation on TV. It had holes in it you could drive a Mack truck through. But it was not the kiddie shows that we'd gotten before. It was not, the deeply flawed iterations of science. The only adult things that had been there were some of the anthology shows. This was the first one with actual continuing characters that you could care about, that didn't just go in and blast the ugly alien, as it were.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about fandom, right, is that you all come together centered around this one particular story or characters, and then your relationships build from there, right? Because Star Trek is not just Star Trek. It is a conversation about ethics and morality and exploration and the human adventure. And that's what I find so beautiful about your story of the Trimbles and Star Trek and the letter writing campaign, and all the stories that Michael introduces in United We Fan.
Yes.
Gene Roddenberry was a secular humanist, and he deeply believed that the human spirit will prevail.
Now, what's interesting in 2018, with so much division out there in the world, fandom online has earned this reputation of toxicity. And sometimes now the word fan is thrown away as a negative. How are you guys feeling right now about fan communities and conversation online and what have you?
Well, I'm a fan. I don't think I have to explain it, and I don't have to defend it. People don't want to like me for that. Hey, I don't know whose problem it is, but it isn't mine. And I don't believe in labeling. I was labeled all my life. My family were Oklahoma crop pickers. My first stepfather was a trucker. You know what kind of thing we were all greeted with in towns we moved into. And so, I mean, obviously, we carried disease when we were thieves. And we might kidnap culture, who knows. But, you know, the thing is that we had to live through that. And my grandmother would have taken a switch to all of us if we'd stolen anything. We did not even steal from orchards. We would find the farmhouse and ask if we could take something. And that's kind of where I was raised. And I don't feel that however anybody else or however angry and mean they are, I will jump them, by the way. Because hello, how'd your mother raise you? You know, well, I mean, look, I'm 85. I get to be a crotchioli if I want to be. We both attend Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con, and we run into people who unfortunately make comments within their hearing because they're not the right shape for a superhero or whatever. You know something? I don't really care if a 500-pound tooth fairy comes coming by. She's happy with the costume, or he, and feels good in it. I'm going to tell them they have a beautiful costume.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember walking in with them into WonderCon. We were filming with them, and we were just trying to walk in. And Bjo, you stopped and talked to everybody whose costume you liked. You asked them questions. I remember me and my cinematographer looking at each other, being like, "We might not make it into the hall." It was great. And it was great. It was just so wonderful to see that sort of camaraderie. Because, you know, what you were saying is we definitely have seen some negativity in fandom, and I think it was a little bit more difficult before the internet you have to write a letter to someone to say you dislike them or call them up on the phone. What it comes down to is you had to be personal. You had to personally put yourself on the line to tell somebody your opinion. And that happened. It absolutely happened. You had, I think, as well, people are in a high-pressure situation trying to do something like, say, a TV show or even show that they're the biggest fan of something. You definitely would have had some personal problems. Now it's impersonal. It's much, much easier to be negative, you know, to be like star fan number one, best guy ever at, you know, and that has its problems. But generally we find fandom is ridiculously positive. It exists to be positive in a negative world. It exists for that. It exists to support a side, a vision of something, whether or not it's a hopeful future in this 1967 when it did not look like the world was going to be hopeful, or lady cops, you know, in 1982 seeing two women on television that were, you know, strong, independent women doing their jobs and not just, you know, wives, talking about the men in their lives. And we've seen that as things move forward, like I said, sort of to Kaylee seeing, you know, sort of vicious killers. The Wheaton Shaw relationship that she loves on Person of Interest, they're beyond what maybe we had been seeing in lesbian characters on television previously, because they were doing what essentially would have been what we saw men doing on TV, which was paid hired assassins. And that was just their sexuality. So there's always something on an identity level that appeals to people and keeps them watching and being positive and wanting to find other positive people. And we had an opportunity in this film. We did film a whole section about negative fandom and what that is. It just didn't fit the tone of this film. And we didn't think fans, the true fans that are going to tune into this film to see the power of fandom, the positivity of fandom, needed to be reminded that there's also toxicity out there.
Yeah.
But I think they all know that the toxicity exists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. To me, what I love about going to Comic-Con, and Lisa and I do it every year. We've been doing it for the last 9 years. And
Which Comic-Con?
San Diego?
San Diego Comic-Con.
Okay.
Well, we should meet up then. We go
Yes,
too.
please.
That would be a dream come true, Bjo and John.
Yeah, we're Inkpot winners from Comic-Con.
I know you are.
Because in the early days, and I mean back when it was Comic-Con was 163 people in the El Cortez Hotel, we set up their art show for them so they wouldn't lose either money or art, and then we helped set up their costume contest. So it didn't last for hours and hours, and one of the instigators of the basic form we follow today at costume contests was Walter Pitney.
Whoa, cool.
That's cool. Wow.
And he said, well, wait a minute. He said, wait a minute, I see how we should work this. They always ask guests to be the judges when some of them have never worn a costume per se. Mm-hmm. But anyway, and he rips up a piece of paper and he writes down a set of numbers and makes a little chart. And he says, this is how we're going to judge. And it was one of the, why haven't we seen this?
Well, that's what I love, right? You go to Comic-Con, and Lisa and I, we always make it a habit to attend a panel of something we know nothing about. So this past year, we went into a panel on Steven Universe, the cartoon. And to experience the passion of that fans, it's infectious. And it makes you wonder, well, what is it about this show that gets this response? And now I want to seek it out. And
exactly.
That's how I felt about the Person of Interest story, right? That's a show I never watched, and it never came across my radar. But because of her story, now suddenly I'm interested.
Yeah, I love that. That I absolutely love hearing. That is what we keep seeing at our screenings. People coming up and saying, I'm going to watch Chuck now. I'm going to watch Veronica Mars now.
Yes.
They came for the one show they liked. They came for that one show. And then realized, wait, there's other amazing shows and positivity. If these people thought like that for this show, there must be something special. Right. It's sort of like good word of mouth. I mean, that's what We Stand kind of is. We Stand is sort of good word of mouth on all of these shows. And word of mouth, as we still know, is the biggest motivator to push people to watch anything, to watch a sport, to watch a new show, to try a knitting class. Word of mouth from people that they respect and like goes really far. And so that's great for this. I think Star Trek will obviously be a big draw. It's a huge draw. Obviously Nichelle Nichols in the film is a draw, and Roddenberry talking about, the Trimbles and what they did is all a big draw. But I love when people walk out and they're going to go watch Person of Interest or Jericho or another show.
Well, John and I we're not big sports fans, and our daughter is an avid Dodgers fan. So
our middle daughter,
yeah, and so we watched the last of the Dodger games. Anyway, but one of these things where I was watching, especially the pictures, and it was like, holy cow! They are amazing people. Mm-hmm. And if the Dodgers don't hire that Brewers pitcher, they're crazy.
I think
from someone who knows nothing about sports,
one of the things I'm most grateful for, I was raised in a kind of not a sports family, but like a sports fan family, and I'm so grateful that Brad is not into sports. I thank him every day. But I know that Michael has to be like impartial documentarian guy, but I am really curious, like, what are your fandoms?
It's funny you'd say something about sports. I'm from Toronto, so you can't legally live here unless you like the Toronto Maple Leafs. You have to like the Toronto Maple Leafs.
We were in Vegas when they were playing. We were in Vegas when the Maple Leafs were playing, and you could not escape that people wearing those jerseys.
They're the Yankees of hockey. So you see a game in Columbus or you'll see a game wherever, and with the Leafs score, the crowd is as loud as the home team scoring. And so and it's funny, I was so obsessive about film growing up, so ridiculously obsessive, and really didn't like sports. I remember when I was in university I had 2 free Leaf tickets, selling them to go watch Fried Green Tomatoes. So I just wanted to go to the movies. And then my friend, a good friend of mine, said, you need to get into something besides film, so you have something else, and certainly something I could talk to you about. So I said, suggest something. He said, Toronto hockey. So I did, and I love it. And it was interesting to get into a sports fandom, to know that in my drawer, if you open it up and you're like, you flip through the T-shirts, you're like, oh, a Spider-Man shirt, a Superman shirt, all these shirts, and then there's Toronto Maple Leafs stuff in there as well. So that's important to me. But as far as my fandoms, I've really loved shows from the 70s and 80s when I was growing up. I really loved Quantum Leap. I really loved Scott Bakula. I really, truly. I loved that story of somebody trying to help other people. If there was a Little House on the Prairie and a Highway to Heaven fandom, I would be all over that. I loved more positive, family-oriented shows that people could watch. And that's one thing I've discovered is all the shows in this film. They're family shows. Longmire is a show and you even say it in the film. Like, finally we have a show we could watch together as a fandom. Chuck, you could watch as a family. It's family and fandom sort of go hand in hand. And it's not, I'm saying wholesome. I mean, they're not necessarily fully wholesome, but they're shows that everyone can watch together, and I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
So this was all just an excuse to talk to Scott Bakula, because good move. Good move on that.
He was great. We interviewed him at Roddenberry head office, and we talked about Enterprise, and they had a very interesting fan campaign as well. For that, we decided we had our Star Trek story, really. And, the people on the other side, people are so surprised with this film. Like, how'd you get Zachary Levi? How'd you get Amy Acker? How'd you get Scott Bakula in the show? It's like, it was the easiest interviews I've ever reached out to get in my life, ever. They were also excited to talk about the time that fans saved their jobs. They were also excited at the time that fans banded together when they felt like failures. When your show is on the verge of being canceled, you feel very low. You feel terrible about yourself. You think you're not doing a good job. Maybe the 5 fans you see are the only fans you have. And then all of a sudden you see this fan campaign and you realize, no, this thing we believe in that we're working so hard on, it works. And that's great. And so when I reached out to Scott Bakula through his rep and said, hey, does Scott happen to remember Dorothy Swanson, who was part of DQT, who helped save Quantum Leap? He does, and I do. I've been with him for decades. What do you want to talk about? It was that easy.
Wow.
So,
That's cool.
Bjo and John, have you been watching Discovery? Talking about my fandom now. How are you liking it?
Well, okay. I wish they would stop putting stuff like this in the past of Star Trek, because it skewed everybody's thinking. How did Enterprise get so modern? And then they devolved back to simple steps and so on. This doesn't make any sense.
Set it in the Star Trek universe, and don't worry about where it is in the Star Trek universe.
Well, and when it is, then have it in the future. Discovery couldn't possibly be in the past. Come on.
They've got a sensational bunch of actors there.
Oh, God.
And the writing is just amazing. You've got this hour goes past like nothing, just bang. It's full of action, and there's things I quarrel with about it, but there's more stuff I really like about it.
Yeah,
that's great.
And I just wish it was in the future. But the thing,
we signed up for CBS All Access. We have to move to the U.S. to get it, simply because of it.
Same. We did the same thing.
Amazing.
yeah.
You know what? That is so amazing to hear. When you think about the fact that Star Trek were, at one point, expendable fans. They were going to toss them aside. They didn't think they were the right people who had any spending power, anything like that. Advertisers, they were going to get rid of it. And then 50 up with this competitive streaming service with Netflix and saying, okay, wait, CBS is free if you have an antenna. Why would people pay for CBS? How do we get a good amount of subscribers to join us all at once? Okay, well, let's find a group of fans that are already connected who would pay anything to see, oh my gosh, Star Trek. They went back and used Star Trek as an anchor to create the base for what CBS All Access would be. It was ingenious to reach out, and you're seeing that more and more as all the networks move over to streaming services and all try to be competitive with Netflix and Hulu, that they're going to look to fandom, and you're going to see the shows from the past come back as they need to start bringing people over to this new service. And where Cagney and Lacey is being redone, Designing Women is being redone, Roswell is being redone, Veronica Mars is back in production right now. A Chuck movie will for sure come around. Jericho almost came to fruition on Netflix a few years ago, but I'm sure it'll come back to CBS All Access. I mean, every one of these expendable groups and communities, fandoms, who over time have stayed connected and stuck with each other as a community, who do rewatches. Even though it's on Netflix, they do these rewatches where they all sit down and watch and tweet together to get that group experience you normally only get in live sort of programming. They're making those worlds up for themselves. And that's what I think CBS All Access was beyond genius for choosing Star Trek as its original base.
Yeah, that's certainly our thoughts as well. You know, what I love about Star Trek is that the audience tends to be one of the most open and loving and curious audiences, and they're willing to see their story, their universe evolve over the last 5 decades, and it's really exciting. You know, Lisa and I were in Vegas earlier this year at the Star Trek convention as well, and to see the wide range of ages, and everybody has their favorite Star Trek. You know, mine will always be the original series crew, but then you meet the people who love Deep Space Nine, you meet the people who love Voyager, and it's just, I don't know, it's just such a loving and warm experience, and that's what I got by watching your documentary, is just that passion to reiterate, to celebrate love of story, love of character. That's what I think is so great about your film, and it's all there in the title, right? United We Fan.
Mm-hmm. I think that it was a terrific idea to start with, and that's why we, told Michael we would do an interview. And took him to our favorite place, Jake's Roadhouse in Monrovia.
Love it.
When they came back, I got some pickup shots, and we said, "Where else would you like to eat?" And he said, "Go back to Jake's." So
and we filmed there. That was great, and that footage makes it into the film. It was. I like making people feel very comfortable when I sit and talk with them. I like talking with them in advance, so my questions can get to the point of what we need to talk about and can be surprising to them. And I love to really research people, what other people have said about them, what history has said about them. And I just found I'm always inspired. I mean, I want to wake up every day and say, what am I doing today that I really love? And making this film, I mean, I reached out to Bjo and John in 2008. Originally, I wanted to make this film. It was in the film, it was a TV show, with each episode being a different show that was saved. And I got them on board. Thank God their email addresses did not change over time. And it wasn't until I wrapped The Missing Ingredient, my previous documentary. And that previous documentary, it was about the New York restaurant that closed, and everybody, how sad they were. And there was a community of Upper East Siders depressed about a restaurant closing. I remember making that film and saying to myself, is anybody going to care about these people losing their restaurant? And then with this film, is anybody going to care about these people losing their television show? And I have had that where people, even in interviews, will say, what do you say to someone who says it's just a TV show? I mean, it is just a TV show. Like, what do you love? What if I told you it's just that? Mm-hmm. You know, it's art. And we get, for someone, I don't know why TV is still so debased. When people probably spend 4 hours a day on average watching it, whether it's Fox News or a sports show show or election results or Netflix obsessively. It's funny, they don't talk about Netflix as being television. They don't talk about the shows they love as being television. Well, the people in this movie, it's this thing that they love too. And it's so influential on our thinking, and these stories are still the moral stories by which we live our lives. You know, we look towards the goodness of these characters and think, okay, well, how can I live a better life? And that's why having the cultural anthropologist in the film talking about the psychology of fandom is very important to us. So you can put, for the people that aren't necessarily Star Trek fans or Veronica Mars fans, they have this person helping explain, like, it's the things you love too. It's just that these people love this.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and the positive, the idic philosophy in Star Trek is so pervasive. Every once in a while, we'll meet a Star Trek fan, usually online, a person who claims to be a Star Trek fan at least, who's intolerant and you know, is threatening something or other.
Mm-hmm.
Will say, you just don't get it, do you? It's shocking when we meet a Star Trek fan like that.
Yeah, it happens to us as well. Not too often, thankfully, but it is really bizarre when you encounter somebody who says they love Star Trek and then you discover that they're intolerant of some other that they fear. It's just like, well, what show have you been watching, you know?
Yeah.
And this would distress Gene very much. He loved getting the positive fan mails. Now, we understand their Star Trek's fan mail for a time, and we learned very quickly that nobody in the Star Trek offices and most of the actors did not have time to answer all the mail. Mm-hmm. This is why we did. But Gene wanted the uplifting ones. Mm-hmm. And we would, of course, you know, everybody needs a good time on that. And we would bring them over to him, and he'd sit through them with this big grin on his face. And a lot of them went up on the cupboards doors in his office.
That's so good.
Oh, wow.
And of course, we saved all of the ones for DeForest Kelly, for that said, in your role, I know you're not a real talker, but your role encouraged me to become a doctor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And a little bit on that, Michelle insisted on getting all of the mail that had a military return address. And what she did was, we could go ahead and send a picture of Uhura, but she would send a picture of one of her cabaret costumes. And, you know, and sign that, and I thought that was very sweet of her.
That's
and
cool.
we get mail back saying, wow, you know, everybody in my unit envies now because I've heard from Uhura, you know.
So we like to end our podcasts and our interviews with a little moment of like gratitude and inspiration. Like so with Michael, like, is there a time in your documentary filmmaking, because we know that it's very strenuous work and sometimes, you know, it can get really tough, but is there any one instance in your filmmaking that you can go to in your mind that fills you with gratitude for the work that you're doing? And then to Bjo and John, is there a time in your fandom when things are getting tough that you can go to in your mind that really fill you with gratitude for all of this work you've poured into being a fan and being part of this greater nerd community?
Greater nerd community, I like that.
Well, I mean, I love that I work with my friends and do the thing that I love, and we do it ridiculously affordably. This is the only way we can do it if we want to tell the stories that we want to tell. We do it on a shoestring budget, but I work with they're professionals. My editor is also my friend since I was 9 years old, and we live within a few blocks of each other, and my cinematographer, I went to university with him, and we talk on Skype all the time, and he lives in Milan, but I flew him across. And being in a hotel room where I sleep on the floor, and, you know, they get the beds, and we work together on the question engaged and so in love with everything I'm doing, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm with my friends, and yes, we're carrying all of our own equipment. Yes, we're on an airplane. At one point making this film, we were on an airplane every single night for five nights in a row, and I'm terrified to fly. So it's like my friends holding my hand on takeoff and on landing, and I just can't believe sometimes I get to do this, to tell these stories, and then to know that I'm putting something ridiculously positive out to the world, like United We Stand. Sometimes I really do kick myself how lucky I am to be in a position to be able to do this with the people I love, telling stories I love.
And Bjo and John, how about you?
I think our involvement in fandom in all of its various forms, that includes the SCA as far as we're concerned, it has had a positive effect on us.
But we've had some special people too. Forrest G. Ackerman, so with us unfortunately. Total nut, but charming. And he was definitely an encouragement and a factor. Our kids grew up thinking he was Uncle Forey, and were very distressed as adults when they found out we weren't related to him by blood. And, I have to say, in comics fandom, meeting Jack Kirby.
Oh, my gosh.
And judging a costume contest with him.
Oh, my gosh.
That would be wow.
And but he made it a very positive experience in a somewhat alien world to us. We were helping out a friend when he came down first. And then, there's just so many people that we could list that were very, very wonderful and helped us deal with all of these fandoms. A lot of them. And by the way, we like all the fandoms. We really do. We've been invited to Arisia, which is in Boston in January, and they're not inviting us specifically for Star Trek. They're inviting us for our work in costuming.
Oh, yes.
Wow,
very cool.
That's kind of special too, So I do agree with don't put all of your favorites in one basket, I guess you might say, because everybody needs a richer life than just following one show.
Yes, agreed. As we're talking, I have a Jack Kirby, Devil Dinosaur, and Moon Boy statues right behind me. And I've got Star Trek posters and Usagi Yojimbo posters on our wall.
Monkeys posters. I love the monkeys.
Monkeys posters. So I just want to say before we end this conversation that, Michael, we really enjoyed your film. We thought it was very much in the same philosophy of passion and love and enthusiasm that our podcast strives to achieve. And
wonderful.
To Bjo and John, this is like no joke. You guys are true inspirations to Lisa and myself. And I really just want to say thank you to everything that you did back then to get Star Trek going and with a letter writing campaign, and everything that you continue to do today to keep that message of hope and positivity and adventure and exploration going. I'm truly grateful for what you guys represent and achieve in your daily life.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. That reinforces our feeling of hope and community, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. The pleasure's all ours. Before we go, is there anywhere online you want to point our listeners to on social media or what have you?
Absolutely. Please. At United We Stand Doc is on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. And the trailer just came out a few days ago, and we're so delighted with it. It's telling people you have a film, telling people you have a film, and then finally giving them something to see that shows all that hard work. So there's screenings coming up. There's a release coming up. If people check out at United We Stand Doc anywhere, they'll see a lot about this film.
Well, we're excited for that film.
Cool.
Well, we're excited for that film.
Thank you very much.
And Bjo and John, you put that invitation out there about Comic-Con. We're going to be there next year. We'll reach out to you. We want to have coffee or dinner or something.
Let's hang.
You've got our phone number now, so...
Yeah, we will reach out to you. Thank you to all three of you. We really, really appreciate it. And there you have it. It's just Brad back here in the Dork Cave. Wow. I'm still basking in the glow of this conversation. Lisa and I were so high after chatting with Bjo and John Trimble and Michael Sparaga that I'm not sure we've even come down to at this point. We're still riding high. And yeah, we're definitely going to take up Bjo and John Trimble on their invitation when we go to the next San Diego Comic-Con. So watch that Instagram feed, guys. And if you haven't already, make sure that you are putting United We Fan on your must-watch list. The film is coming out on December 4th. You're not going to want to miss it. It's a lot of fun, guys. So with that, let's make sure that you are following my fellow dorks. Darren Smith at The Disco Dork on all social medias. Brian Young at The Turtle Dork. William Dass at WB Das on Twitter and Instagram. My lovely wife, Lisa Gullickson, at Sidewalk Siren on all social medias, including Letterboxd. Make sure you're following her there. And I am Brad Gullickson at MouthDork on all social medias. Until next time, dorks, take care.